Hey, welcome back to my channel. Something's happening in Ontario. Something that almost no one saw coming. Behind the polished statements and calm press releases, a quiet betrayal just sent shockwaves through Canada's auto heartland. Stellantis, one of the world's biggest car makers, has decided to move Jeep Compass production from Brampton, Ontario to Belvedere, Illinois.
It is yet another blow to Canada's auto sector. Stellantis announced it's moving the production of its Jeep model from Brampton, Ontario to Illinois. Washington has been pushing automakers to bring production back to the U.S.
On paper, it's just another strategic shift. In reality, more than 3,000 Canadian workers lost their jobs overnight, while the U.S. gained 5,000. The company called it a rebalancing act, blaming Trump's 25% tariffs for forcing its hand. But was it really just about taxes? Or something deeper?
Anger and outrage from the union representing workers here at the Brampton Assembly Plant on Williams Parkway. It was back in February that Stellantis announced it would be temporarily pausing production on the Jeep Compass in response to U.S. tariffs. The union says it was essentially radio silence from that point up until Tuesday night when they learned that production would be moving south.
Because here's the twist most people don't talk about. That Brampton plant wasn't struggling. It was being retooled, rebuilt, using Canadian taxpayers' money to prepare for the EV era. So when Stellantis packed up and crossed the border, it didn't just take jobs, it took trust. Ottawa's response? Swift, sharp, and unlike anything we've seen in years. But before we dive into how this decision might rewrite the rules of North American industry, and why Canada's reaction could set a global precedent, hit that like button if you're finding this eye-opening. It really helps us beat the algorithm.
So Unifor Local 1285 represents workers in this Brampton plant. How are you, first of all, reacting to this decision?
We're very concerned, very shocked. We got this news yesterday from the company just before 5 o'clock when they put it out to the news media. Right from February, they've been telling us we're going to be committed to the Compass and the J4U or Brampton. So this comes out of nowhere.
And that's where things took a turn no one expected. Ottawa didn't just issue a statement. It went on the offensive. Within hours of the Stellantis announcement, Prime Minister Mark Carney and Foreign Minister Mélanie Joly delivered a message that cut straight through the corporate spin. If you break your promises to Canada, there will be consequences.
Well, let me be clear on Stellantis. I'm extremely disappointed about this decision, and not only am I disappointed, it's completely unacceptable. So we will fight for these jobs. We will fight for the jobs at Brampton. We'll fight for the jobs that were committed by Stellantis, and we'll fight for our auto sector.
Joly called the move unacceptable, warning that it could be treated as a breach of investment commitments. She made it clear that Canada would no longer tolerate corporations taking public funds and then walking away. Legal action, she emphasized, was firmly on the table if accountability wasn't met. Carney echoed that stance, calling the decision a direct consequence of U.S. tariffs. But he didn't stop there. He reminded everyone that Stellantis had received up to 14.6 billion Canadian dollars in public support for its Windsor battery plant. That accountability must follow the money. It was more than rhetoric. For the first time in decades, Canada was signaling it might take a global corporation to court, not to punish, but to defend the principle that taxpayer-backed investment comes with obligations. And that line in the sand? It could redefine how nations deal with powerful multinationals in the years ahead. If you've made it this far, you probably care. Consider subscribing to stay updated. That warning from Ottawa didn't fade into the news cycle. It grew louder inside Parliament. Behind the political outrage was a paper trail worth billions, and now every line of it is being examined under a microscope. The joint venture Nexstar Energy, a partnership between Stellantis and LG Energy Solution, had secured roughly 15 billion Canadian dollars in public incentives back in 2023, two-thirds from the federal government and one-third from Ontario. In return, the company agreed to maintain its full manufacturing footprint in Canada. That clause wasn't symbolic. It was written into the deal as a safeguard for jobs and industrial sovereignty. Now, members of Canada's House of Commons have approved a full investigation into those agreements, unredacted and public, to determine whether Stellantis violated the employment protection terms. For many lawmakers, the issue isn't just about one automaker. It's about whether taxpayer-backed industrial policy can be trusted to deliver what it promises. Officials have also reminded the public that this isn't the first time Canada stepped in to rescue the company. Back in 2009, when Chrysler was collapsing, Ottawa and Ontario poured in nearly $2.9 billion in emergency aid, a reminder that Canada has repeatedly acted as a financial backstop for the industry. Legal experts now suggest that if Ottawa pursues and wins a case, it could establish a global precedent, one that binds corporations to the same level of accountability as governments when public money is on the line. As the debate deepened in Parliament, something unusual happened: unity. While Stellantis tried to deflect blame, an instinctive alliance formed across Canada. The federal government, Ontario's leadership, and labor unions closing ranks to defend Brampton. Ontario Premier Doug Ford drew a hard line. Not a single dollar will be released until Stellantis presents a restart plan for Brampton. He blamed Trump's tariffs and urged Ottawa to consider countermeasures if Washington didn't relent. Meanwhile, Unifor, representing over 8,000 Stellantis workers, called the move a serious breach of the 2023 collective agreement. Its president, Lana Payne, warned, "If we don't play hard, we'll always be the side that loses." Ottawa responded by creating a special task force linking federal, provincial, and union leaders to protect jobs and redirect Brampton's production capacity. The mission went beyond saving one plant. It was about proving that Canada's industrial policy could act decisively in a world of shifting corporate loyalties. But instead of spiraling into crisis, Canada did something unexpected. It adapted. The Brampton shock, rather than collapsing the system, triggered one of the most rapid industrial pivots the country had seen in decades. What began as a loss quickly evolved into an opportunity for structural renewal. Ottawa moved fast, ordering Stellantis to present a new mandate for the Brampton facility by 2027, one that prioritizes next-generation electric vehicle production. This wasn't just a political demand. It was a way of forcing the company to integrate Brampton into Canada's evolving EV strategy rather than abandon it. Meanwhile, parts suppliers across Ontario began redirecting production toward the Windsor-St. Thomas corridor, the emerging backbone of the country's domestic battery and EV network. The federal government expanded its employment support funds to cover roughly 3,000 affected workers, helping them retrain or transition into related fields, and in doing so, prevented a chain reaction of layoffs that many had feared. At the policy level, Canada started rewriting its own playbook. Incentives were no longer granted based on corporate promises, but on measurable local performance. How many jobs were created, how much production stayed within Canada, and how strongly each project contributed to the national supply chain. Analysts now describe this as the birth of a more self-reliant model, a made-in-Canada EV framework designed to reduce dependence on foreign partners and strengthen the country's industrial autonomy in the long run. As the political storm eased, Stellantis found itself somewhere unfamiliar, on the defensive. For years, the automaker had set the pace of negotiations, but this time, Ottawa controlled the narrative, with public opinion firmly on its side. Under pressure, spokesperson Louanne Gosselin said Stellantis would continue discussions with the Government of Canada. A small but telling concession. To preserve goodwill, the company pointed to a third shift added at its Windsor assembly plant as proof of continued investment north of the border. Still, the optics were difficult. Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown warned, "If Stellantis wins through intimidation, others will follow." His words echoed a broader sentiment. This was no longer about one company, but about Canada's willingness to defend its industrial sovereignty. Across business circles, the standoff was viewed as a turning point, the rare moment a multinational was forced to respond, not dictate. Many investors now see Brampton as a case study in how mid-sized economies can reclaim control amid global trade turbulence. By the time the dust settled, the Stellantis Canada showdown had become more than a factory dispute. It was a global case study in economic sovereignty. It proved that even a mid-sized nation could stand up to corporate overreach and make its rules matter. Observers in Europe and Asia are now watching closely. Many view Ottawa's reaction as a model for linking public investment to corporate accountability, not protectionism, but fairness. According to one senior official, Ottawa's stance was unmistakable. Taxpayer funding would no longer be treated as a bargaining tool for global corporations. The message resonated well beyond Canada's borders. While Stellantis balances between Washington's pull and global markets, Canada has quietly positioned itself as a safe haven for transparent, rule-based industrial partnerships amid turbulent trade wars. Economists warn that if the U.S. keeps weaponizing tariffs, allies may follow Canada's lead, building their own safeguards against policy volatility. The question now isn't whether Canada won this round, but whether this moment signals a new industrial order, one where smaller nations prove that real power lies not in size, but in setting the rules. If this video gave you something to think about, like and subscribe to support more content like this. Thank you.